Let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba, and here with me in New York, NBC's national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, and MSNBC legal analyst, former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney Catherine Christian. Monica, as we continue to monitor the president's remarks, what else are we hearing from him, and what's expected on day 2 of Maxwell's questioning?
Well, that's exactly the question that I posed to the president a couple of minutes ago, Anna, because that is the main issue here that we still don't have a complete understanding into, which is what is the goal of these meetings. The president praised Todd Blanche, saying that he is an excellent attorney. Of course, this is somebody who has represented him as a criminal defense attorney in several cases and knows the president pretty well. So he kept the focus on that. But what I also thought was really notable is that we tried to ask him his thoughts about whether he's considering clemency for Ghislaine Maxwell. And he said that he didn't want to engage on that really notable line of questioning. Here's a little bit more of what he told reporters on the South Lawn.
Well, I don't know about the meeting. I know it's taking place, and he's a fantastic man. He's a great attorney, and people should really focus on how well the country's doing.
Would you consider a pardon or a commutation for Ghislaine Maxwell if she's cooperating?
It's something I haven't thought about. It's really something. It's something I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not thought about.
Interesting there that the president said he's allowed to do it, but that he hasn't thought about it. When another journalist asked him the same question, he said, look, this is an ongoing investigation, so I don't want to talk about that. But of course, now that that is out there, these are discussions that could be taking place in the White House and with the Department of Justice about these next steps, because that is the other issue here, Anna, about the idea that the White House didn't want to be talking about this anymore, but with high-profile meetings like the one that's continuing today, and the president just last night urging and saying that he wants to see some grand jury testimony continue to be released, some transcripts potentially, which so far the courts have said would be really difficult, but that's something he's still calling for. So there are some next steps that are still open here, even though the president in his own answers to us just now said he would rather be talking about other things. He'd be rather talking about the U.S. economy, and he did talk a little bit about his meeting yesterday with the Fed chair and tried to pivot to some of these trade deals he's hoping to get across the finish line in the next couple of days. But he took a ton of questions, and many of them were, of course, still focused on this issue plaguing the White House.
And we will be talking about the economy and his meeting there at the Fed later this hour. But coming back to Epstein and this interview with Maxwell happening, day 2 of interviews, Tom, we've discussed how just unusual it is for a deputy attorney general to be involved in an interview like this. You add in that, you know, Trump has a personal connection to Maxwell. You have Blanche's friendship with Maxwell's attorney. You have Blanche previously representing Donald Trump in a personal capacity. It's easy to see how all the goals here could get muddled. Is Blanche fact-fighting or negotiating here? And do we know, is it on behalf of Donald Trump or on behalf of the DOJ?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking all the right questions. So let's just encompass everything Monica said about this. I was trying to think about it last night. What is the goal here? What is the mission? So just to underscore the unusualness of this, a deputy attorney general might, in the highest of profile cases, get a phone call, maybe get a quick little email updating him or her on the specific nature of a case or an ongoing investigation, only in the most high-profile cases. The idea that a deputy attorney general would become personally involved in the case at some point and spend a lot of time on it, or would actually conduct an interview, is just not something I've ever seen in my career. So that is unusual. Looking at this, the Department of Justice just a couple of weeks ago told us in a memo there's no Epstein client list, that there was no blackmail effort. He wasn't recording anybody in exchange for or tied with his criminal conduct. And the third thing is that there were no other uncharged third parties that they could potentially go after. So effectively closing this investigation. Now we're going out and interviewing somebody who's at the very center of the conspiracy, convicted, that you're talking about. So I really don't understand what the goal here is. I don't know, and we're trying to figure out, myself and my colleague Mike Cosner, trying to figure out whether or not there are any agents in the room. Is it just Todd Blanche in the room? So is he the only witness? So if he's the only witness, that creates problems legally. What is actually going on here? We hear from Maxwell's attorney yesterday that she didn't need to invoke any privilege. So I'm trying to think about all the things that Ghislaine Maxwell knows, the things I know that she knows. We have so much information about Ghislaine Maxwell. This is a very unusual case. We have had so many civil depositions with her, so many civil filings. So much of this so-called Epstein files is public. It's sitting on my computer, reporters' computers around the country. We've used it to report on this case for almost a decade. So what could you be asking her where she's not considering invoking a privilege that's coming close to criminal conduct? Again, it goes back to what is ultimately the goal here. Now, people are asking, could she get out of prison early? There is a motion. I think maybe on this show yesterday I mentioned it was a 5K motion. I was actually incorrect in that. It's a Rule 35 that occurs because it would have been a year after she was sentenced. But there's some very specific criteria in that. So you can't come back to the Justice Department later and say, oh, I happen to remember this thing, and you should really talk to me because I don't like being in jail anymore and I want to get out. It has to be information that comes after 1 year after sentencing that you learned that could potentially be helpful.
New information, truly.
Truly new information. She'd been sitting in prison. I mean, what type of investigative activities has she been conducting? And so it does raise some questions here. Where this is
So
going.
many questions. Catherine, coming back to one thing that Tom mentioned, and that is, Todd Blanche interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell. If there aren't other people that are part of this interview, does he now become some kind of witness if there are new investigative leads that come from these interviews? What are the implications? And does this whole interview with Maxwell at this point make sense?
Well, that would be professional incompetence. No prosecutor should ever interview a defendant or a witness alone. You have agents with you. You have your paralegal with you. You have witnesses. So I would be shocked if Todd Blanche is interviewing her alone. I mean, obviously her attorney is there. So that would just be incompetence. And to follow up on what Tom said, Maxwell is not an Epstein victim or an Epstein client. She was his partner. So if this is a real interview and not a
jury convicted her on that.
20-year sentence. If this is a real interview and not a performative one, there probably were uncharged people, but the reason why they went uncharged is because there was no proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I would ask about those people and see what she knows about them. I would obviously confer, though I think Trump fired the prosecutors who handled the Epstein case. I would ask about that. And even if she gave information about that, because she is a liar, and that's what they said at sentencing, the prosecutor, I would have to corroborate every word that came out of her mouth. So that's the problem with this interview. What is the point other than performative?
Guys, last night, Maria Farmer, one of the first accusers of Maxwell and Epstein, spoke here with MSNBC, and her lawyer said, despite all of this new activity in the Justice Department, the DOJ still hasn't contacted them. Watch.
The FBI and DOJ memorandum that says we will not release any files. There's nothing to see here. We're not going to charge anyone. This is over. And they made this conclusion, reached this conclusion without even talking to a single victim.
One of the steps they're supposed to take is reach out as a part of the victim notices process. Have they done that at all? Have you heard from them, Jennifer?
Not a peep, nothing.
Tom, this is now what we're hearing from another lawyer and an accuser involved in this Epstein case and the investigation. Is it typical for victims to be brought into it along the way in terms of investigative steps and key parts of, whether you're closing a case or interviewing a convicted person who's implicated in these same crimes?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, that's why we've been pounding the table on this reporting on this network and on all of our networks here for the last couple of weeks. If you're going to conduct a thorough review, at some point you might want to pick up the phone and talk to the people that were in the room that were the victims of crime. This is the Department of Justice. The idea of prosecuting individuals is so that there is justice for the victims. The justice is served in the interest of the United States. Is that happening here? Let's remember how this whole case really kind of came to be once the non-prosecution agreement was signed. The victims were furious that they were not notified that Jeffrey Epstein got a non-prosecution agreement from then United States Attorney Alex Acosta. The FBI wanted to arrest Epstein well before this, within a year of getting the case from the Palm Beach Police Department, which wanted to arrest Jeffrey Epstein at that moment. So there was no doubt the people who were investigating this case wanted to make an arrest. They get this non-prosecution agreement. The victims are furious. That's how we've gotten so many of the files that we've gotten already in this case. And now you're saying that you're conducting a complete review, that you've found no information that could even predicate opening an investigation. So you don't even have, they're saying, any information that could even allow them to open a case against a third party. And you've still not talked to the victims, but you're talking to Ghislaine Maxwell,
Right.
who's convicted of trafficking them.
Well, in fact, one attorney for some survivors has now sent a letter to Todd Blanche, to congressional leaders, saying, I am here and, my team is here for you. We can assist in your preparation for these interviews with Maxwell, given our intimate knowledge of the case and the alleged crimes here. So is it surprising to you, Catherine, that they haven't reached out to the victims, not even their attorneys in this process?
Surprising and shocking if it's a real reinvestigation or real interview. In addition to looking at the file of her trial, you're going to speak to the victims, the people who she abused, along with Mr. Epstein, and get some information and ask her about it if it's a real interview. And give them a heads up. They shouldn't have to read or on the news or hear in the news that they're seeking to get the grand jury testimony, they meaning the government, that they're going to be interviewing their abuser. So, yes, that's another unprofessionalism, I'll use that word, that's occurred in this matter.